Anthony Woodle is 29 years old and lives with his fiancee of 7 years, Emily, and has two loving parents, Steve and Anita Woodle, and a younger sister, Christina. He's the general manager at the nationally known Terrace Theater in Charleston, South Carolina, and just recently started his own prop building business. Growing up, Anthony was labeled a goth kid due to his love for all things macabre. In fact, his engagement even involved a haunted house on Halloween night. A typical night at home involves curling up on the couch to watch the latest horror hits, along with their cat and brand new puppy. Anthony also knows that he's going to die.
Joey has asked me to talk about my current circumstances on his podcast, and I agreed to do so, although I'm way more comfortable expressing myself in written word. So I wanted to take a moment to read this Facebook post that I feel expresses best where I'm at with all this. I know that I'm gonna die. I don't know when. Could be a few months or a few years. There's really no way to know for sure. I know that I'm beyond the point of being cured, and it's more about delaying the inevitable for as long as possible. I know that I won't be able to live as long of a life as all of my family and friends. I'm slowly making peace with that. Still, it is a strange feeling knowing how I'll die. But at the same time, there is a positive aspect to it. You know, they always say to live every day like it's your last. Well, knowing that my last may be sooner rather than later has really allowed me to take a step back and look at my life from a different perspective. I'm happy with the life that I've lived. In the 29 years that I've been around, I've been a musician, I achieved my dream of producing a feature film, and I even had it shown in a movie theater. I helped the hungry through a haunted house every Halloween. I've been fortunate enough to have a family that loves and supports everything I've ever done, friends who care about me, and I've spent the last 7 years with the love of my life, who I soon will get to marry. Of course, there's still plenty that I would want to do, but I am satisfied with what I've already done. To clarify, this post isn't meant to signify giving up. My will to live is stronger than it's ever been. I don't know how much time I have left, but however long it ends up being, I intend to truly live each day to its fullest. But whatever ends up happening, I want everyone to know that regardless if we're close or we haven't spoken in years, I'm happy to have known all of you.
So, Anthony, I appreciate you joining us, and I just want to jump right into this. And I think as we discuss specific things that have happened and a timeline, people will kind of get to know you and who you are and how you've processed stuff and everything. But I imagine, and this is speculative, but when you first found out that you had cancer, there probably wasn't almost anything in you that like you weren't processing it as, oh, this is going to be how I'm going to die. It was like, oh, well, I now have to do chemo and radiation, and we'll get through this sort of thing. Is that how you received that initial news?
Well, actually, it was kind of weird because when I found out, it was absolutely nothing like it is in the movies.
Yeah.
Like you see in the movies, it's like this big dramatic thing, like the doctor calls you to the office and breaks the news to you and everything. And for me, that's not even how it happened. So when I first started having the symptoms, they did an endoscopy. This was October 24th of last year. They did the endoscopy, And whenever I woke up, they told me that they found the tumor. At the time, they didn't know if it was cancerous or not. They said they were going to do a biopsy and get back to us.
Yeah.
And then I had a follow-up appointment on the 27th of October where they were going to do like a more in-depth scan. And so for that day, I went to the hospital. I was in the hospital gown, laying in the bed and everything, ready to be put to sleep.
Right.
And I was in the room just like having a casual conversation with my parents who were there with me. And the doctor comes in and he was like, so I talked with the pathologist and it is cancer. Just so like nonchalant, matter of fact. So,
Good.
And that was like right before they took me back into the operating room to put me to sleep. So at that point, I didn't even like have a chance to process
or talk to your parents in depth or anything.
Yeah, it was just very matter of fact. Yep, you have it. All right, let's go to sleep.
Good gosh.
And so then when I woke up from that scan, then I was able to start processing it. And everything just happened so fast. It was just the next thing I knew, I was being scheduled for all these different tests, all these different doctors. Like literally for 2 weeks straight, I was seeing a doctor every single day for a different thing.
Yeah.
And so yeah, like that initial, I never had a chance to process it.
That
honestly.
is insane. That is insane. Like, do you see that as something that is fairly excusable because of just the sheer numbers of people he deals with? Because from my perspective, I'm like, that's messed up. Like at least treat you like maybe you are a number to that guy, but don't treat Anthony like a number. Like, yeah,
I mean, at the time it was kind of shocking, but looking back on it, yeah, like to him it's probably just such a normal thing.
Yeah.
You know? So
yeah. So what is your? It's so crazy. I hate using words like this, and I'll tell people I'm gonna actually read a text that I sent Anthony just so people know my posture. I said, hey, Anthony, what's a good email to send questions I came up with? I want you to know that I'm a very open book and I'm used to having very open, non-surfacey conversations on this podcast. I would hate it, though, if any of my questions come across inconsiderate or uncomfortably morbid. Please let me know what may be offensive and or what you'd rather not talk about. Obviously, I've never been in your shoes, and I'm quite a bit cautious and wanting to honor and respect what you're going through. The questions I sent, none of it was bothersome, but like, I mean, I just catch myself like right now, I was about to ask, so what's your status right now? And I'm like, status, like, I don't like that word, but like where are you at physically? People heard your Facebook post that you put out a few weeks ago. Are you still in that mind frame of this is what I'm going to die from unless something crazy, miraculous, weird happens?
Yeah, pretty much. Actually, just yesterday I had an appointment. They had done an updated CT scan to see where I'm at, and we're pretty much trying to figure out like how to, like at this point it can't be cured. This treatment that I'm on right now is more about just trying to keep it under control and delaying the inevitable. So like I am still in that mindset of I don't know when it's going to happen, but I know that it is at some point, and this is what's going to cause it.
Yeah. That's heavy. So what is the best case scenario time? Like if you keep fighting it and the treatments are as effective as they possibly can be, are doctors giving you a best case scenario timeline?
Not really a best case. They did give me a year if the treatment doesn't work. So far, it seems to be keeping everything under control. And I asked them yesterday, like, is this something that can just go on indefinitely? And they said to a point. They could keep it going for like 4 or 5 more cycles, which a cycle is like 8 weeks, I think. And then after that, it depends on like what kind of effect it's having on my body.
Right.
'Cause, chemotherapy is like, I mean, it's essentially a poison.
Right.
it kills the cancer cells, or it manages the cancer cells, but it also kills healthy cells.
Right.
So at some point, it'll be to a point where like my body just won't be able to handle it anymore, I guess.
Yeah, or I would imagine maybe you come to a crossroads where you're like, I don't want to do this anymore, even though it can extend it. I mean, I have no idea. Like, is this something that you ever thought about before it actually happening? Like, I actually knew a woman who passed away probably a good 6 or 7 years ago, and it was like her worst fear to get a terminal illness, and she was almost obsessed with it. And sure enough, that happened. Like, is this something that you've even put any thought to as a possibility, as far as like having, I mean, you're in a unique situation in life. A lot of people die and they didn't know they were going to die, car wrecks and all that sort of thing, but here you are processing the fact that you know how you're going to die, and this is it. I mean, has this ever been something that you imagined even?
Not necessarily this specific way,
Yeah.
but it is. I feel like I need to give a little bit of context of like growing up.
Yeah, please.
When I was a kid, I was always labeled as like a goth kid.
Yeah.
I don't really know what it has been, but for as long as I can remember, like I've had a very interesting relationship with death, I guess.
Yeah.
I hadn't really experienced too much death within my family. Like most of my family is still alive, but just I've always kind of been I don't know, interested in like dark and macabre type stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that in a way, like subconsciously, that's how I've coped with the inevitability of death my entire life. Joey, you've known me for a long time, and you know that like I had a big like haunted house that I did every Halloween, and
Right.
My whole life is kind of revolved around Halloween. The listeners can't
right
see
now.
it. Yeah, they can't see it, but like behind me, there's a bunch of like Halloween stuff. And I think that subconsciously, that's just how I've always coped with the fact that I knew that eventually I was going to die. And, I've thought about all the possibilities. I've thought about terminal illness, car wrecks, being murdered, all this stuff. Like, all of it has crossed my mind. So I never really necessarily thought stage 4 esophageal cancer.
Right.
But,
yeah,
I have thought of it in the past. And I think that might be why I've been able to cope with this as easily as I have.
Yeah. So are you saying like the certitude of death has been problematic for you as far as something that you have to figure out how to deal with? Because I would say a lot of people, they know it, but it's always in the back seat of their mind, so to speak. So this is something as far as, because you're saying that your love for Halloween and death and goth and all that sort of stuff has helped you to cope through the years of even knowing. So it's been something that otherwise would have been pretty problematic, like just obsessed with it.
Yeah, pretty much. I had this conversation with a good friend of mine when I was like coming to terms with everything, and I explained to her, I was like, leave it to the guy whose life revolves around a fake cemetery to find the beauty in his own death.
Yeah. Goodness. So are you? So you do not believe in God, correct?
Correct.
So so I would, and the reason I ask that is there's really no one or nothing to be angry about, or can you have like just a general sense of anger at life, or do you have any experience of anger right now?
Not right now. When I was processing this, I did go through like all the stages of grief,
Right.
Sadness, anger, all the way up to acceptance.
Right.
So like there was a period where I was kind of like, why me?
Yeah.
What did I do to deserve this?
Right.
And then like as I was learning to cope with it and everything and accept it, I realized I didn't do anything to deserve this. It's just one of those things that nobody can control, and it just so happened that it picked me.
Yeah. Do you go in and out of seasons of fear? Like obviously you don't know what it's like to die, neither do I. So is it scary? I mean, because if you're, especially being, I guess I would say you're a naturalist. I don't know if that's an accurate depiction, but you basically are anticipating the lights to go out. So I guess there's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, pretty much the way I view it is it's going to be exactly the way it was before I was born. I'm
Yeah.
not going to I'm not going to realize that I'm dead. So in that aspect, no, I'm not scared of it.
Yeah.
Um I guess the thing I could be a little bit scared about is as it's happening, I
Right.
don't know what that is going to feel like, if it's just going to feel like I'm falling asleep or if
Right.
there's going to be pain involved. So in that aspect, I am a little bit afraid, but as far as being dead, I'm not scared of being dead. No.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you, what are like what falls into the saddest of all things category right now? Like, I think it's obviously some low hanging fruit, but I'm still on the outside looking in. Like, what are the things that make you the saddest about where you're at right now?
Honestly, it's leaving everybody else behind
Yeah.
and knowing that they're going to have to continue on without me. I'm engaged to be married later this year, and we're still going through with that and everything. But it breaks my heart to know that at some point she's going to be left alone, and she's going to have to deal with that without me there.
Yeah.
And same for my family and all my other friends. That's what's the saddest to me, is that there's nothing that I can do to comfort them about that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. What's her name?
Emily.
Emily. So, I mean, I obviously, it's interesting because I totally get what you're saying about Emily, but my mind immediately goes to your parents because, even something Priscilla and I have discussed is we obviously don't want to lose one another, but both of us would choose to lose each other rather than to lose a child. So like I cannot even imagine what your parents are going through. Like that's just, yeah. There's it. Do you ever fall into self-pity and you're sad for yourself, or it typically revolves around other people? Because I mean, I think you have any and every excuse to have self-pity right now.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it really just revolves around how it's going to affect other people.
Yeah.
I don't know if at this point everybody has already heard what my Facebook post said or not, but it's like I said in that post. I have been alive for 29 years, and in those 29 years, I have accomplished a lot.
Yeah.
I've achieved a lot of personal goals, and so as far as like myself, I'm happy with where I'm at.
Yeah.
And if I were to die tomorrow because of this, as far as I go, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
But it breaks my heart for everybody else.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely nothing that I can say to make it better for them.
Right.
And that's the worst.
Right. Are there some days when it is way easier to manage all the emotions and processing, and then some days where it's almost impossible and overwhelming? Like does it just fluctuate? Is every day different?
Yeah, it fluctuates. It really depends on like what's going on at that point in time, really. Like whenever I have my doctor's appointments and find out the latest news, obviously that gets a little bit more emotional, a little bit harder to deal with. But on any given day, it is what it is. I'm living each day as if it's my last.
Right.
And obviously right now with this virus going on, everybody's kind of like self-quarantining, myself included. But even still, just like being stuck at home, I'm making sure that I'm doing everything I can to live to the fullest, because my last day could be any day.
Yeah, totally. And honestly, me and everybody else should be doing that regardless. But I don't do that. Like I don't. It's almost like I don't. Maybe you're a better person than I am and lived that way before having all of this. But it's all if you didn't, then it's almost like you've been giving a gift. I mean, it's a morbid gift, but it's a gift all the same because you are able to live that way. I mean, are there aspects of this time that is even like I was just thinking, I was putting myself in your shoes, and there's certain things that maybe I worry about financially, or uh, care for my teeth, for crying out loud, just these long-term things that if I think about, maybe I get a little worried about, or just very practical things, money things, and all of that. Is there a sense of freedom that, I mean, you
Um,
don't really have to think about those long term stuff? And see, this is where I feel like an asshole.
well, yes and no. First of all, you said maybe I'm a better person. I would never consider myself a better person than anybody
Yeah,
because of like my mindset or what I'm going through. Everybody, they all have their own struggles and cope with them in their own way. Um, but as far as little things like financially, for example, I wouldn't go out and buy a brand new Corvette
right.
and get all this debt that then Emily would have to take over once I
Sure.
die. But a good example I can think of is last week, our cell phone bill was due. And we had been talking about going out to a nice dinner. And it was kind of like, okay, well, I can either pay my cell phone and eat ramen noodles tonight, or we can go out and have a nice dinner and I'll just take the late fee on my cell phone.
Right.
Normally, you would want to pay your bills on time, but
Yeah.
for right now, like, yeah, a late fee for my cell phone is not is as important as the experience of going out and having
Yeah.
a nice dinner.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes
So,
sense.
like, in that aspect, yeah, like, there is a sense of being free. But again, I wouldn't take on like a massive amount of debt because then somebody else would
Sure.
have to take that
Yeah.
over.
Yeah, for sure. Or even like, and I have zero, I actually don't know whether you are or not, but like if you were someone that liked smoking and you tried not to smoke, it's like, well, I actually had someone tell me, they're just like, yeah, if a doctor told me that I was going to die on a certain day, regardless of whether I smoked or not, I'd smoke every day, so, even like health stuff. But I guess with this being something in your esophagus, like smoking would just be crazy right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a smoker anyway, but yeah, I haven't really changed my opinion on that. I
Yeah.
wouldn't start smoking now
Right.
just because,
Right.
I don't want to add on a new type of cancer.
Right. Totally. Or even something like, if you feel like, man, I really should exercise more. And obviously, some of these are poor examples because I would imagine your energy and your strength to exercise regularly is not up to par with what you're going through. But
Yeah.
those are the sorts of things I'm talking about. Like, exercise regularly for what?
Right. Yeah, I mean, if I had been a bodybuilder or something, then yeah,
Yeah.
I would probably be putting that on the back burner
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Do you ever have like gut check moments where just for a split second you forget what's going on? Like maybe thinking along the lines of, man, something's on my bucket list. I can't wait when I actually are able to do that. Or you think of, I don't know if you are the type of person that wanted to have kids or just anything. Are there times when you think about that stuff?
so Emily and I, we bought our first house. It's been a little over a year now. It's a nice place. It's a 2-story townhouse, and our intention was to make this like our starter house for
Yep.
like 4 or 5 years. Eventually have a kid, and then move on to like a more permanent house.
Right.
And every now and then, like, we'll go to Lowe's or something and we're looking at stuff and I'll be like, hey, this would be really cool when we have a house in the future. And then I kind of get that thing in my head that's like, oh, you might not get that house in the future. But, at the same time, it's like I said earlier, like the same thing with our wedding. I'm not canceling plans.
Right.
I'm not rolling over and just giving up. I'm just, I'm accepting what might happen, but still living as if it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And even thinking about, it's Emily, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even thinking about Emily, like this changes her whole paradigm as well. Like just how she sees life. I mean, it's impossible for her not to, because the person that she decided to spend the rest of her life with, she now knows that it is extremely limited time. So it's interesting. I would imagine her perspective being, I guess, quote unquote, on the receiving end of knowing you is probably pretty profound stuff as well. Do you see humanity differently? Like, are you more appreciative of just people in general? Are there folks that you have reached out to for reconciliation that maybe you are on bad terms with, or just any sort of relational stuff that you've wanted to fix or make better or anything like that?
I wouldn't say that my outlook on like humanity as a whole has changed or anything. I've always been a very empathetic person, so I've always, I've been able to put myself in other people's shoes. But as far as like people reaching out or me reaching out, I don't know. I guess I never really had any like enemies growing up or anything.
Yeah.
But I have had people that I went to school with for 12 years, from kindergarten on, that I literally never spoke to. And they're like adding me on Facebook and reaching out and being like, hey, I just want you to know I'm thinking about you. Even though we never talked, you made a difference in my life, or you made an impact in my life in this way. And that's really incredible to people that I never gave a second thought about after high school, like knowing that I, in some way, made an impact in their life.
That's I couldn't imagine just what it's like to hear something like that with where you're at too. So this is a question that you and I didn't discuss beforehand, and I think maybe it could top the morbid chart. Is how would you rather go with what's happening right now to have this extended timeline that you are stewarding and you are able to do stuff, or would it have been preferable to die instantly somehow? Like, have you ever thought about that, like the advantages and or disadvantages with what you are going through?
It's kind of a big question.
Yeah.
So sorry, I'm trying to think of like how to put it into words.
No, take your time.
I wouldn't want it to be instantaneous. I like, okay, so a lot of people say that if they have a near-death experience that their life flashes before their eyes. My life has been flashing for my eyes now for 6 months.
Yeah.
And that's how I've been able to look back on everything. And I kind of like this slow process. I've actually written letters to people that I plan on giving after I die.
Yeah.
Just like some final words. And most people, or a lot of people, don't have that option.
Opportunity. Yep.
So I wouldn't want it to just be an instantaneous sort of thing. I like the extended, drawn out thing, so I can make my peace with everybody.
Yeah.
And when the time comes, I would hope that there would be people there,
Right.
So that I could say like final goodbyes and all that.
So have you thought, as far as knowing or having relatively knowledge of how this is going to play out, have you thought very specifically how you want it to play out practically? Like, do you want your family around? Do you want Emily around? Do you want, do you want to be alone? I would imagine that's not what you would want, but
yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to be alone. I would want to be surrounded by Emily and family and everything, like I said, so that I could, give them my final goodbyes.
Right.
as silly as it sounds, I'd like to be able to post like a final message on Facebook to like let everybody know that this is the end.
Right. This is happening.
It's been great. you know.
This is, yeah. Um, how do you prefer people to act around you? And I guess the people that I'm talking about are ones who you have a good relationship with, and so these are the people where you could actually tell them, hey, I really don't want you to be sad around me all the time. I don't want to talk about this all the time. Like, how do you want people to interact with you on just the day-to-day?
Yeah, I mean, I really try and keep everything just as normal as possible with interactions. I know people are gonna bring it up. It's just it's in their nature. They want to know what's going on. So I never tell anybody, listen, I don't want to talk about this.
Right.
But at the same time, like, yeah, I prefer people to just treat me like normal.
Right.
I'm not dead yet. I'm still here. So
Right.
let's just make the best of what we have.
But then they're like, dude, you've always wanted to talk about death and Halloween. Has anyone, and you may not want to give specific examples because of the possibility of them listening to this, but has any really dumb things been said to you where I would imagine just the person you are, you gave them the benefit of the doubt and understood they didn't mean it, but are there things that people say to you and you're like, what? Think about that, man. Why the hell would you say something like
that? Maybe not to that extent. I have had people try and like give me advice and stuff, and like, I to their face, I'm not going to be like, wow, that's really stupid, but I'm appreciative that everybody's thinking about me. But yeah, I mean, people have given me some like really terrible advice, and yeah, like, I'm not going to go into specifics. But
right. Yeah, totally. So you've already touched on it a great deal, and so if nothing comes to mind outside of this, that's totally fine. But what else are you wanting to do with this time? Like, do you have any specific plans of things that you want to do before time is up?
Well, I have never really been one to plan like big trips or anything.
Yeah.
So there's no like major trips I want to do. But right before I got diagnosed, I had actually just started a business. It was gonna do a lot of stuff, but the main thing was I was gonna create like a prop house, building props, because that was something that I really got into. And I would like to get that going again. All that's on hold. Like, I had filed the paperwork and I have like the business licenses and everything. But that is one thing that I definitely want to get off the ground before it happens.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of my energy levels.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Have you had any shifts in your general reflections on life and what you think the meaning of it is, or is that something that's fairly consistent even before having to live in this space? Or I'll just put it this way, like what do you think is the meaning of life, or is that even a silly phrase or question to ask?
I guess honestly, I don't think there is one meaning of life.
Yeah.
I think your life is what you make it, and everybody has their own purpose that they give themselves. If your purpose is to go overseas and help unfortunate countries in one way or another, like, that's your purpose. If your purpose is to build a haunted house and raise food for the hungry, that's your purpose. If your purpose is to sit around and play video games all day, that's your purpose. I don't think that any one person's purpose is better than another. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, life is what you make it, and I think that you are all that matters as far as that goes.
Yeah. So I get and I can appreciate one's purpose not being better than another, but do you ever, now having, I guess, a perspective that a lot of people don't have, are there things that, if someone came up to you and said, Anthony, I'm asking for this sort of critique, so don't feel bad about telling me, but what are some things that I should probably stop doing, do more of, stop thinking about, think more about? Like, now that you have what you have, are there things that you would like, any admonitions for humans and just how we do our lives?
Um, I'm not sure if I know how to answer that one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because like I would never want to tell somebody how they should live their life,
Yeah,
but I would say a lot of the cliche things that people say: don't dwell on the past, live in the moment. All that's guaranteed is right now, and whatever you are doing right now is what's important, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. I think that's actually huge. Something I'm trying to do more of. So wrapping this up, I was thinking, would it be, especially if the person was cool and someone that you would enjoy their company regardless, but would it be something that you would welcome to be able to spend time with a friend who's going through the same thing you're going through? Like, do you ever feel, even though you're extremely close to Emily and love your parents and all of that and have great friends, do you ever still feel alone because you're the only one going through this?
In a way, yes. A while back, before I had come to terms and come to accept everything, when I was still going through like the stages of grief and everything, um, a lot of people were telling me that I should talk to a counselor
Yeah.
or something like that. And I felt like, even talking to a counselor hasn't been through this. A
Right.
counselor, nobody, at the risk of sounding like an angsty teenager, like nobody can possibly understand what I'm going through unless you've gone through it yourself.
Right.
Um, so in that aspect, yes, I have kind of felt alone. But I've still had the support of Emily and my parents and all my friends to talk about how I've been feeling. And so I've been able to get that support, even though they may not necessarily understand
Right.
exactly how I'm feeling.
Right. So a very stupid thing that someone can say, and I'll say it for you, is, dude, I totally understand what you're going through. I'll just go ahead and say, I hope no one has said that to you. Is there any, especially with your goth makeup, I'll call it, not literal makeup, but just like, your preferences and all of that, are there certain arts that you've been leaning into, certain artists, musicians? Like, when I went through being heartbroken over a girl, I mean, there were certain songs that I'd want to listen to and certain bands I'd want to listen to and that sort of thing. Like, are there things that you turn to a little bit more
um,
regularly because of what you're going through?
I wouldn't say so. I mean, most of the music I listen to and have always listened to is about death, anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. 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 I hear you. Well, I do want to give you an opportunity to, say or express anything that I haven't asked about. But if there's really nothing left as far as to put on the table, I do want to hear. I think in your Facebook page you made mention about a movie that you, I think, wrote, produced, and
Wow.
all of that. And I actually have no knowledge of that. I think it'd be neat, honestly, for our listeners to be able to track it down if it was something that they could see online or something like that.
Well, what that was, I had gone to college for film and video production, and I used to have a company that I co-owned with a good friend of mine. We had this like comedy series on YouTube and stuff, and we decided to um, try and do a reality show.
Yeah.
And of course, it was based around Halloween. We were gonna go around the country and do this reality show about like different haunted house attractions.
Yeah.
Um, and so we did like this pilot episode. It was about an hour long with local people who are listening probably know about it. Boone Hall Fright Nights. We had done this pilot episode with them, and we had it screened in a theater as a way to try and get funding to produce a full blown series. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. But the series, that pilot, is still available online. I have my own YouTube channel that I have been kind of like documenting this whole process and my thoughts on it and everything. So if you just search for my name on YouTube, you'll find a ton of stuff. You'll find all my cancer videos as well as the series that we had, all that stuff.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes for people to easily access it. Well, man, I'm kind of speechless and stuff like this, but I do appreciate knowing you as well, and hopefully we'll continue to be in contact, text back and forth, that sort of thing, and obviously, you and I aren't like super tight, but I do want you to consider me a friend that's here for you, man. And this idea to have you come on here honestly was precipitated by your post on Facebook that people heard at the beginning of the episode, and I was just like, daggum, man, you are pretty good with your words, and just I do think that, and I think the very fact that you don't see yourself as someone that has so much wisdom and stuff to teach other people is why I think that your voice is helpful when it comes to the fact that you're processing something that other people have no clue what it's like. So I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you putting yourself out there and kind of being in the public eye. I know probably sometimes you maybe would think, and I'd just like to stay away from all that. I mean, I have no idea, but I think everything you're doing is adding to this world and being helpful to people. So I certainly appreciate it, my man.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. I hope that I was able to explain myself well enough.
Yeah, for sure. I think you did. All right. Well, thank you so much, Anthony.
My will to live is stronger than it's ever been. I don't know how much time I have left, but however long it ends up being, I intend to truly live each day to its fullest. But whatever ends up happening, I want everyone to know that regardless if we're close or we haven't spoken in years, I'm happy to have known all of you.